Did hearing that get you into a spooky mood? That is Bach's Toccata and Fugue in D minor, a piece that was originally written to be church music, but has now become ubiquitous in pop culture with haunted houses and horror and Halloween and spooky, scary things. My name is Walker, and this is the Recap episode, a podcast where I use social science to research, review, recap, and realize new things about reality TV, covering shows that are all-time favorites and shows that you've never heard of. In this episode, I'm talking about the first season of Halloween Wars, a money-making food competition show from the Food Network in 2011, set in the aesthetic and the theme of Halloween, which itself even opens with Bach's Toccata and Fugue in D minor, entirely there just to set the mood and get you into the vibe to see some scares. Now, if you've seen Halloween Wars before, you may be asking and you may be thinking, this is just a holiday-themed competition show. What deeper themes could it possibly present for any kind of analysis? Isn't it just marketable fun that is designed to capitalize on the excitement around a holiday? And my first answer to that is, you're absolutely correct. This show really is just there to take advantage of people who are fans of Halloween, make a somewhat exciting show and fit it into the October viewing schedule to draw more people in. The limited time offering makes it enticing. The theming and the fact that there's nothing else like it around the rest of the year makes people want to watch it. Me, myself, I'm a huge fan of Halloween. It's my favorite holiday. And so when I went into this show, I was already kind of thinking, I was like, okay, what is this show going to tell us about commercial Halloween and marketing Halloween? The Halloween that is, okay and safe to put on TV and to attach ads to. If you spent any time online, particularly in the YouTube sphere, you'll have a pretty good understanding of how advertisers react to certain kinds of content and how they either do or really do not want to have their advertisements attached to content that they may deem unsavory or unfavorable or just weird, and Halloween can kind of toe the line, because there's definitely Halloween that can be super duper scary and off the rails, but there's also, again, this commercialized, I call it kitschy Halloween or homemade Halloween. It's that, the decorations you see from Walmart or Target or Spirit Halloween, the kind of decorations you would see at a school or at someone's, house Halloween party. Nothing extravagant, nothing huge put on. Of course, the show here has a reality TV show budget to some extent, so there's, some more effort put in. What I found from watching the show was actually even more than that, but it turns out this show it provides us a really good look into what it's like to actually be on a reality competition show. And so that was a big surprise. I'm excited to get into that. So I watched this on Plex. Just going to say, you can watch it there. I'm not sure where else you can watch it. You could probably watch it through Food Network somehow. The show was made by Super Delicious Productions, which does sound like a front, but it's not. These are the people who are responsible for other Wars shows on Food Network, so Cake Wars and Cupcake Wars. They also made Craft Wars, a show about crafting. If you've watched any of those other Wars shows before, like Cake and Cupcake specifically, this show uses the same exact set and sound stage as those shows, just with different decorations. I was watching it and I kind of went, wait a minute, this looks familiar. And did some quick Googling, and if you Google Cake Wars and you just go to Google Images and look at images from the show, and then you do the same with Halloween Wars, you'll be like, wait a minute, that's the same exact table setup, the same exact ovens, the same exact arrangement of the stations, down to the same giant photo frames on the wall. They've just swapped out the photos and the lighting. And of course, for Halloween Wars, we have a coating of Halloween decorations all over. I'm just going to note here, Super Delicious Productions is apparently also responsible for both Mansers and Farmer Wants a Wife. If you've ever seen either of those shows, you know what we're kind of in for. Clearly, this productions company is really good at making a very niche type of show that caters to like a very specific audience. Men who watch too much TV and people who like themed food competitions. So, another note on the kitschy factor, the logo for this show, and talking about the set again, all looks like it just came directly from Spirit Halloween. In a way that I love, but definitely in a way that I can tell some people would be like, this is like tacky and too simple and plain. I could not find a lot about the history of the production of the show. I did find out through some like local newspaper interviews with some of the contestants, some details. I found out specifically that the seasons of the show are actually taped the previous December in order to have in-season pumpkins. We'll get to why that's important in a moment. So this first season aired in 2011, which means it would have been filmed in December of 2010. So Halloween Wars is a, again, food competition show themed around Halloween. This first season, and for I think the first 10 seasons, they changed it later, which was a huge like disappointment to the Halloween Wars fandom, I found out. They get teams of 3 people, a sugar artist, a cake maker, and a pumpkin carver. And these teams are pitted against each other to make scary Halloween horror-themed food creations in competition with each other. You usually have to do with a theme, and they have specific requirements about what must be included, what elements they have to make, how they have to incorporate each of the parts, as well as a piece that is edible. Since we have to make this a food competition, there has to be a piece that is actually edible, I guess. We had 5 teams this first season. I'll introduce them in a moment. The show has 2 consistent judges for each episode, and then each episode also brings on a guest judge. So our 2 main judges, we have Shinmin Lee. She is a cake artist. She's the founder of San Francisco's I Dream of Cake. She makes like haute couture cakes, is what I've seen it described as. And then Miles Tevez, he's a Hollywood artist and concept designer. We're primarily told that his like major work in movies was on the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. I'm sure he's done plenty others. That's just what the host, Justin Willman, who does magic, it turns out, that's usually what he highlights for his little script to introduce the judges. These judges are fun. I will say Shinmin and Miles are great judges. Miles brings an element of like analysis to the like horror and the craftsmanship of what he's seeing and like the storytelling. Shinmin is there really to judge the edible component, but she does also have a really good eye for like overall composition and cohesiveness and the ability for each member of the team's skills to come through in the final product. It's usually what she dings the teams for in her judging. Both of them have active Instagram accounts, and I definitely recommend following them. Miles posts a lot of like concept art and things he's working on in terms of like creature design within the movie industry, and Shinmin posts a little bit of everything. She is still like the host of Halloween Wars to this day. She's also a host on Holiday Wars, and she posts about both shows. She also just posts a bunch of her own normal stuff. It's a very fun account to follow. Our 5 teams, again, consist of a sugar artist, a cake maker, and a pumpkin carver. I'll quickly read through all the team names and who's in them, just to give a proper shout out to all the people who participated in the making of the show and all these cast members. So, Team Tarantula, and they all have spooky names, right? Of course they do. So, Team Tarantula, we have Susan Nodder for the sugar artist, Andrea Carusetta for cake, and Michael Natiello on pumpkin. The Blinged Bats are Karen Portaleo on cake, Julie Bashor on sugar, and Sean Feeney on pumpkin. Team Boo is Ray Villafane on pumpkin. Interesting note here, his Wikipedia page says that he's allergic to pumpkins. Andrea Reed on cake and Jensen Chan on sugar. Skulls of the Abyss has Corey Hansen on cake, Chris Maniac on pumpkin, and Louise Chien on sugar. And Something Wicked has Pam Leno on pumpkin, Ruby Carlsruhe on sugar, and Becky Rink on cake. Becky, I found out, was actually on Wedding Cake Wars in 2008 and also The Ultimate Cake Off. So by this point, she's actually had a little bit of experience being on these kind of shows. And I will say, just before getting into a bit of the recap, Watch the show. It's fun. It's really short. It's only 4 episodes for the first season, because again, it only takes place during the month of October. In later seasons, they push it a little earlier and a little later. I think there's a couple 6 or 7 episode seasons where they start like midway through September, or they bleed a little bit into the first week of November. But it's primarily just contained to the month of October itself. So most seasons are 4 or 5 episodes, depending on how long. Like October this year of recording, 2025, technically can last like 5 Fridays. So they could like get 5 episodes out of it if they wanted to. This show is a really masterful example of how to edit a large amount of footage into a like 45-minute program, and also how to use cast confessionals to like move things along and provide the tell for what is hard to show. So each episode of Halloween Wars has a common format. There's 2 challenges per episode. We have what's called the Small Scare, which is going to be a quick, like 45-minute challenge for the teams to produce something small, but it has to be, cohesive and good and fit the theme of the whatever challenge is. And then we have the Spine Chiller, which is the big, giant challenge. They usually get 5 or 6 hours to produce this. And it's really asking them to, pull out all their skills and make something that is, like, incredible. And Spine Chiller is also the one that will include, like, you have to make an element of your creation that is edible. So each episode, in addition to the 2 challenges, really has, like, a staple, concrete, like, structure. We open each episode, we get the scary Bach Toccata, we get the Spirit Halloween logo, not their actual logo, but the Halloween Lores logo. Justin, our host, introduces the show along with the regular judges. Teams come in, there'll be some talking head interview footage. Justin greets the teams, introduces the guest judge, and then he'll present the small scare. The teams will work on their small scare creation, and we get thrown back and forth footage-wise constantly between all the teams. Then there'll be presentation and judging of the small scare creations. We'll get a little bit judges' deliberation about it, along with their feedback. Justin then presents the small scare winner, and he'll mention any benefit they gain for the Spine Chiller Challenge. He'll introduce the Spine Chiller Challenge and its conditions. Teams get to work on that. Usually a twist is then introduced to us, typically part of the way through the Spine Chiller. Teams go back to work, we're getting footage, we're again bouncing between the teams. Usually this is where they highlight some drama for the episode. And each episode has drama or tension or conflict. Then we get the judging of the Spine Chiller, which includes commentary on the looks and the designs, as well as the taste and the experience of the edible component. We get the presentation of the Spine Chiller winner for that episode, and then we also get the announcement of who's going home. Episode 1 aired on October 2nd, 2011. The last episode aired October 23rd, so we really did just last 4 weeks, aired the same. Episode 1 is called Witches and Scary Places. These titles are real, uncreative. You can tell already what they're making. It's the first episode, so we get to meet all of our teams. We get to introduce to the show and everything. Something I've noticed, and, I can't tell if this was decided this way ahead of time, or if this is like they just the production team figured out who was the best at it. But each team only has one person who gives interviews. It's Ray for Team Boo, Karen for the Wingbats, Corey for Skulls of the Abyss. Only one person is giving like the interviews and providing commentary. I kind of like it that way. When you had 15 people at the start, even when you get down to like 6 at the end, it's nice to just have like one consistent narrator for each team throughout the show and throughout the competition. And they picked the people who give good interviews, I will say. Karen, Ray, and Corey are very entertaining, and they know how to kind of like tell the story and provide like little bits of tension and their opinion and like what they're concerned about, how they're feeling in the moment. Even if the confessionals were filmed later, which they absolutely had to be, because these members of these teams were working on their creations during the making. Sometimes you can't tell when confessionals, interviews, talking heads are filmed. The show is edited in such a way to make it real sneaky, but sometimes you can just use logic. And again, if all the contestants are working on the competition, they have to film these interviews at a later time. So, our first guest judge, Jamie King, an actress. She's specifically noted to have been in Sin City, My Bloody Valentine 3D, and Pearl Harbor. I've seen 2 of those 3 movies. I'll let you guess which 2. And never reveal the answer. Our small scare challenge is to create a witch. Just make a witch, out of pumpkin sugar and cake stuff. I say cake stuff, we're going to see a lot of actual cake mass, like the bready cake, but also a lot of fondant, a lot of buttercream. I think more buttercream than fondant in this season. We haven't quite hit the fondant apocalypse, the fondant takeover that cake artists would become known for in the 2010s, but we'll get there. So we see that the teams get to plan during the time of the small scare, and we'll see the same thing for the spine chiller. I was initially curious about whether planning time was part of the time limit or not, but it looks like it is. They have to plan and then start working. And so 45 minutes. We get 2 witches with cauldrons made out of the pumpkins, as you could probably guess. 1 just witch head made out of pumpkin. And 1 team makes a creative frog witch. And this is where I was kind of getting into what can this show tell us about Halloween and people's ideas of Halloween and what is allowed on TV, on the show as well, because the show is PG rated. None of them can get too crazy in their designs. So to see a team that's our witch is transformed into a frog. She does this once a month or something. I was oh, that's creative. That's fun. It's not just, everyone's not just doing the classic same witch. We did of course get to see classic imagery, the pointy hat, scraggly hair. No one did green skin, which I thought was interesting. That wasn't witchy enough for these people. Or maybe they're trying to be creative in a different way and not go too cliche. I could definitely see how that's a problem here, where you want to make your creation have some of the characteristics of the iconic imagery of the creature you're making or the theme you're following, but not go so cliche that you get called uncreative. The winner of that small scare was the Bling Bats, the people who made the Frog Witch, which was really cool. They had the croaker of the frog was blown sugar, which is a really cool way to do that. Their prize for winning the small scare was they got an extra assistant for the next round of the competition, the spine chiller. I did note here it almost took the first half of the whole first episode to get through all the intros and the small scare, which is a good way to pace it, I think. I feel if it was spent too much time in the second half on the spine chiller, it would get a little slowed down. So, spine chiller challenge for this episode is to create a haunted location. It's all the prompt they're given. And they have to incorporate an edible spider treat. Each team gets 6 hours and 1 extra assistant, which means the Bling Bats actually get 2 assistants for winning the small scare. We get to see, the planning, their ideas. I have a note that this show is just a lot of fun just watching the teams at work. It's also cut very, very quickly. We don't spend a lot of time with any one team for too long unless there is something dramatic happening. And usually by dramatic, I mean a conflict, something unexpectedly goes wrong, or there's a tense moment where they're trying to put something together. It's oh, the thing might break, it might collapse, but then they do it, or it does break. Justin, gives them time warnings. He gives them a 5-hour, 3-hour, 1-hour warning. I did have a note here. I'm what do the judges do during this downtime? Are they just sitting in the set for the whole 5 or 6 hours waiting for the team to finish? The answer is yes, because at one point we're looking at Team Tarantula having some apprehension about how they're using the pumpkin in their design, and they're discussing it, and in the background we can actually just see the judges chatting with the host Justin. So good to know the judges could sit there. I'm sure they could get up and leave because they're not the focus of this part. But it was funny just to see them in the back. We get a little bit of drama, conflict. Like I said, the spine chiller is really where a lot of the reality TV tension comes into play, and how they kind of keep you going through the second half of the episode and really hook you in. We got a little sneak peek of this during the small scare that the Bling Bats team was having some team conflict, particularly between Julie and Karen. During the spine chiller, There's a moment where Julie pours some hot sugar because she's trying to make this like green, swampy water effect. So she was going to use like green melted sugar to make that kind of glossiness. She pours it onto this glass platform they're using as a base, and it completely cracks the platform to the point where it might not be able to like hold the pumpkins anymore, like the weight of them, and it makes this whole conflict. Karen's frustrated because she's like, come on, Julie. Because Julie's a sugar person, and in the first small scare, even though they won, they had some like trouble with her being able to produce her blown sugar pieces correctly for their frog witch. We get to judging. Team Tarantula, they make a like spooky tree house followed by a bunch of man-eating spiders. The Bling Bats make a spooky swamp, which is like, it really does look like a cool miniature like little set almost, which is the judging comments that I think Jamie and Shinmin gave. At this point, when they're talking to the Bling Bats, Miles brings up like the tension in the team that the judges observed. Karen is just like smiling and delivering not quite side-eye, but kind of the eyes are like, I'm gonna kill you, but I'm like smiling through it eyes to Julie, who I forgot the name briefly in my notes and just note as the British one. Julie made a comment in response to Miles talking about the tension, about the team having strong personalities that may clash. At that point, Karen looks at her and like does that smile like, oh yeah, you don't say. I'm gonna turn it into a meme. Her reaction there was golden. Skulls of the Abyss makes this like complicated, like, they're like, what's underneath a haunted house? A giant grim reaper and like a hell, I guess. I didn't quite get the concept that they're going for. It's a lot of mishmash together. Only for like the haunted house, the like focal piece of the like story at the top to look bad. They had like too many different aesthetics. I agree. That's what like the judging comment was. I also note here, Shinmin, she's like, oh, the buttercream looks really good. She says it's fabulous buttercream. And then we got like a horror sting, which I'll insert here so you know what I'm talking about. The editing for this show is very silly and fun. Something Wicked, one of the teams, they made like a haunted fireplace that kind of looks like a tree. Not a great like story being told here. It looks really cool though, the like pumpkin. But Miles is like, he's like, oh, great tree. And they're like, actually, it's a chimney and a rooftop. And he goes, oh, could not tell. And then Team Boo makes a haunted swamp house with a like pumpkin muck monster. That's just incredible detailing on the like face of this muck monster pumpkin carving. This is the one that judges are like, this feels like a real movie set. Looks really cool. We get some judges' deliberation. We get their comments. The winners are Team Boo, the ones who made this haunted swamp house with a muck monster that likes to eat trick-or-treaters. Team Tarantula is eliminated. The ones who made the not really inspiring haunted tree house being taken over by spiders. Susan on the team, really, she was our narrator for their team. She's like, I should not have been sent home first. No. Karen, she comes in from Bling Bats in a narration interview, tells us, she feels great about the judging and not going home, but she doesn't feel great about the team. We're referencing back to the conflicts in Julie. We got a sneak peek of the next episode, which before I knew that they filmed everything in December, is actually a really good sign in case you're learning how to like interact better with reality TV and analyze it from my show. If you get a sneak peek of a future episode, that's a good sign that all the episodes were filmed at once, rather than being filmed and released live. Something like a Big Brother or a Survivor, because they would have already filmed it, right? That's how they can make a sneak peek. So, episode 2 is called Scary Tales. We open up with the recap of the previous. We get some narration interviews from Ray and Karen. Karen fills us back in on the conflict between Julie and herself on Team Bling Bats. And that's when we learned that Julie actually left the show. And Susan from Team Tarantula joined them to stay in the competition, who was the interviewee narrator for their team, the one who was, mentioned that she shouldn't have been sent home first. So good job on the editing team to sneak that little foreshadowing into the end of the first episode. Even though these would have been days apart when they aired, watching them back to back was a nice little experience. And I will say, when these shows first air, of course, again, they are days apart. They may air weekly. But this kind of show is really good for filling airtime during the month of October on the Food Network. So every time they make a new season, they get another 4 to 7 hours of TV airtime that's already pre-made that they can just rebroadcast. Come watch this Halloween Wars marathon where we do all the first X seasons to up to our new one, you know? And so having this editing in a way that's like not only good for watching each episode individually each week, but being able to marathon it is honestly really, really smart. So A+ to the editing production team on that. Clearly that production team, again, knows what they're doing because they've been making these shows for a while. And they've got it down to a science, a formula. Start of this episode proceeds same as last one. Introduce the teams, introduce the guest judges. Justin usually makes some clips about the theme of the episode or something. Our guest judge for the second episode is R.L. Stine, the author of the Goosebumps books. I kind of geeked out a little bit. I love Goosebumps, and I love R.L. Stine. He's wonderful. So I was excited to see him judge. Although he did seem a little, I don't want to say disengaged. I'm very curious about how they actually even got him onto the show. And I'm going to say the same thing about the guest judge for episode 3 when we get there. So the small scare in this episode is each team gets a stuffed animal, a teddy bear, a kitty, a duck, or a rabbit, and they have to create its monstrous counterpart. Justin explicitly states to remind them to combine their skills in the challenge. Once they get to work, I have a note here that says, poor Julie, the British one. If she watched this season herself, Karen says the Blingbats are already doing so much better as a team. So you can imagine how Julie might feel if she was watching the season from home the following year to see how she was characterized in the first episode as kind of a fool, I'm not going to lie. Someone who's not as skilled as maybe the rest of the other team's sugar artists, or as skilled as they should be for this competition. And then when she voluntarily leaves and is replaced, their team is like, wow, we're better now. So, sorry, Julie. The Blingbats take their duck and make a creepy duck chicken thing coming from a gross egg. Something Wicked makes a demonic bunny. They reference specifically Monty Python's Killer Rabbit from Quest for the Holy Grail. Skulls of the Abyss just make a scary kitty. And Team Boo have a bear. They certainly do something with it. Ray is worried the whole time about it not actually being creepy, and the execution is bad. And guess what? It's not creepy, and the execution was bad. Not good. The winner for the small scare ends up being the Blingbats, who made the Clucky, the foul rebirth. There's a pun there. Theirs was really cool. They used the pumpkin as like an eggshell, and then they made the creepy duck out of cake. And then the sugar artist for the team, who is now Susan, made like the egg slime, like the placental slime, out of like some sugar to lay on the bottom. It looks horribly gross, but an excellent creation. I scroll down in my notes and I see the the horrible bear from Team Boo, and I just have to laugh. It looks so bad. Watch the episode, or see if you can find pictures, or I'll find a way to like post some pictures of this horrible bear. But yeah, winners of Blingbats, which is really cool because now 2 small scares for them. Although Corey from one of the other teams has an issue with the lack of the carving on the pumpkin in the bat small scare, because they just kind of chopped the pumpkin in half, roughed up the edges to make the shell look cracked, and that was it. As, of course, with the Spinechiller in the first episode, because the Blingbats won, they get an extra assistant, so they get 2, everyone else gets 1 assistant in addition. Spinechiller challenge is to create a creepy version of a classic fairy tale, and then incorporate a tasty treat for some visiting trick-or-treaters. I thought, and I'm sure some of the contestants thought, visiting trick-or-treaters was just like a euphemism. Like, you just have to make, like, something that looks like candy for your treat. No, they brought children in. That was the twist. They brought actual, like, 3 kids. I don't know whose kids they were. Maybe the kids of people filming the show, or, like, staff members or crew members or something. But 3 kids showed up in costumes to eat the treats and judge them, and that was honestly very entertaining. I'll also note here that Justin didn't introduce this twist fully until part of the way through. Like, they were, like, maybe 2 hours into making their haunted fairy tale, classic scary fairy tale creations. And then Justin was like, I have a twist for you. The twist got its own, like, on-screen text chyron on the... very, like, simple font. It looked very... Again, very, like, kitschy, very homemade Halloween. I don't know why they needed text on screen to just say, the twist. And that's all it said. It didn't say, like, the twist, make a treat for Halloween trick-or-treaters. Just said the twist. The treats end up, is very funny as well, because these, like, professional food artists, the sugar artists and the cake makers are the ones making the treats usually. They kind of went, like, high concept. Again, I don't know if they didn't realize that trick-or-treaters actually meant literal children, because one made, like, a hazelnut butter toffee cobblestone for, like, these little, like, stones leading up to a house. They're doing Hansel and Gretel. One team made, like, a caramel with salty peanuts and white chocolate in it. Another, like, a graham cracker marshmallow. There was one that was, like, a passion fruit chocolate thing, like, kind of high concept. The kids did not like most of them. They're like, this is too complex of a flavor profile for these children. Teams are doing pretty well. The high tension for this episode is on Andrea from Team Boo. She was their cake maker. She kind of loses it. She's very stressed. The, like, tension of the competition is getting to her, having to complete all this stuff and trying to, like, you know, do well in the time limit with the constraints she has and trying to produce whatever fantastical creation they're trying to make. She can't find her tools at one point. She is stressed. She's starting to, like, yell at people. And she legitimately, like, walks away to, like back set. Ray goes after her to try to, like, help her out, calm her down. She's trying to get away from the cameras. That's what's going on here. She just wants a moment to, like, pause and stop and, like, collect herself before she continues. But literally, like, the camera is on her. And this is something else to kind of, you know, if you're learning to really take, like, a critical look at reality TV while you watch it, and especially in these competition shows, try to figure out how many different cameras they need to produce all of the angles and footage that they are getting. And keep in mind that for something like this, it's very possible that all of the teams have a dedicated camera person on them at all times, so that the editors have as much footage as possible to cut down into the episode in the most entertaining and engaging way. And so imagine, like, how many, like, stationary cameras there are, how many cameras are on those little, like, dollies, and then imagine how many people are also working with, like, handheld cameras. The fact that when Andrea leaves, there's someone immediately able to go after her with a camera, you know, should kind of tell you, like, how much of production goes into this. And when you think about this, also think then about trying to be a cake artist, like, for this specific show. You're a sugar artist, pumpkin carver, you're a cake artist, you're trying to work with your team, people you've probably never met, trying to make this design, trying to put it all together. You really want to win the prize money at the end. There's money at the end. You've got the cameras on you, you've got all this stress, it's stressful, it's happening. And you're having to do it all, like, on the set, in a kitchen you're not familiar with. And then you've got a camera in your face, you've got microphones. I think they had a lavalier mic attached to them, but there could have also been boom mics, or other kind of, like, sound recording, along with the camera crews. You've got studio lights, you know, shining on you. You've got, like, hair and makeup team people potentially there. We at least have them for, like, the judges. A lot going on, you know, to film this show, and it can kind of make you break a little bit if you're not used to it. And Andrea walks away. She does eventually come back. She says she wants to, and she has to do this. She wants to finish it, but she wants the cameras out of her face if she says so. And to me, this is just like a great example of a reality TV show cast member perhaps not quite realizing the full reality of what it means to make such a show. You know, you've got cameras on you all the time. The crux of a reality TV show is to try to get as much unscripted footage and content as you can to then turn into the show. If they start leaning more into like scripted moments and things, then you start getting people who, like me, who are going to come around and be like, how much of this was real? You know, and we all buy into the lie a little bit that we go, oh, it's reality television. We understand that it's produced. We understand that it's edited to convey a specific message. They could have been nice to Andrea and not put any of her breakdown in this episode, but they were not, because it made for entertaining TV. I noted here, I can't really tell who's going to be going home, because at this point in the challenge, everyone had been doing pretty well. And then I noted, there's actual children here. The trick-or-treaters are real. So we get to the judging. Team Boo did Little Red Riding Hood. Their scary twist is that Little Red got eaten by the wolf. Their creation was the wolf in the bed, made out of pumpkins. The bed was made out of like chocolate and cake. And there's like bloody gore all over the place. I don't quite think the teams expected actual children to show up, because for some of their creations, the children were like, "This is scary." This was their Team Boo. That's the one of the Andrea that made this. And Shinmin, she says she has issues with the cake. She's like, this cake wasn't shaped. It was just cake. It's very like square and everything. And Shinmin asks Andrea, because she's the cake artist, she goes, is this something that she would do at her home, like kitchen? And Andrea goes, no, it's something we do in 5 hours. It like cuts back to Shinmin just making a kind of like, okay, got it, like face. Andrea is not having a good time. Something Wicked, they do Hansel and Gretel. Their twist, because Hansel and Gretel is already kind of spooky, is it's the version where the children don't escape. They don't kill the witch or whatever. They make a little witch with like a cauldron that she's making a stew, and the cauldron has like arms and legs sticking out of it. That's the like scary part, which is a cool idea until you see it and you realize that that's such like a small element of the entire piece, that's what they really got dinged on. Shinmin's like, oh, it's a friendly looking cute diorama, but not really scary. Team Skulls of the Abyss did Jack and the Beanstalk. So they have like the beanstalk, they have a goose, they have Jack on the beanstalk, but I guess they also wanted like the scary element is the giant like getting Jack. But like I'm confused because like the beanstalk is also the giant. I think I missed a piece. Shinmin loves the goose, is what I noted. Miles didn't like the fact that it had no shading. It looks cool. It's tall. That's like impressive, and there's a pumpkin for like the giant's head at the top, which is impressive that it's like up there and not falling off. Bling Bats, they did Sleeping Beauty, and her prince never came, so she's just a corpse in a bed. They did a really good job. Their thing actually looks like a Halloween decoration. Like from afar, it doesn't look like it's made of food. You get close and you're like, oh, this is fondant. This is chocolate. This is, all these things. This is the one of the kids when they approached it, because it's a skeleton. It's a literal life-size skeleton in a bed that was like rotting. The kids are like, oh, this one's scary. The winners were the Bling Bats with their terrifying Sleeping Beauty. The other teams, they were told Something Wicked's was just too cute, the Hansel and Gretel. Team Boo had some brilliant pumpkin work, but it was covered up. Something Wicked gets sent home. At this point, I know, poor Andrea, she needs to go home. She was on Team Boo, so she's still there. Episode 3 was called Zombies vs. Vampires. We open with some interview from Karen, Corey, and Ray about current feelings and past moments so far. We find out this episode that Andrea quit, so we've had 2 people quit the competition. Andrea quit and she was replaced with Becky from the recently eliminated Something Wicked team. Our guest judge this week, and again I go back to how did they get R.L. Stine on the show? The guest judge this week is Rob Zombie. I'm going to repeat again. How did they get Rob Zombie on this show? He really likes to engage with like the other judges and the hosts and the contestants. They kind of just let him have fun, which is good to see. He also tells the contestants that he's not here as a food judge, but as a horror visual judge. Thank you, Rob, for clarifying that. Shinmin is the only food judge here. And I guess the children from the previous episode. The small scare challenge for this one is to create an edible skull in honor of Dia de los Muertos. I'm going to point out that the challenge was to make an edible skull, and that edible piece got dropped completely because every single team made a skull out of a carved pumpkin. Which, yeah, you can eat pumpkin, but like not just the raw carved pumpkin. So they immediately show Becky working well with her new team. So similar to Sorry Julie if you watch the season, extra sorry Andrea if you watch the season later on. Not only did you have to watch your own breakdown get aired, but then you also got to see your ex-team do better without you. So, oof. A lot of the teams at this point are really worried about like cohesiveness and making sure each of their 3 team members' skills are properly like shown in the final product. That's what like at least one team has been dinged on for, not only the like spine chiller, but for also the small scare in the first 2 episodes. Most again of the teams are making just a skull out of the pumpkin. Bling Bats get creative here. They use their pumpkin to actually make an altar, and then they make a proper like chocolate skull on the inside, I believe, which is really cool to see. You know, getting a little creative. And as Pam states as part of that, their team will be the better like outcome because they're actually telling a story and not just making a pretty skull. So, Skulls of the Abyss makes a pumpkin skull with some candles on top. It looks okay. They tried to like cover the skull in chocolate and then carve the chocolate and the pumpkin. That did not work out well. The chocolate got really muddied. It was cracking. It was hard to carve through the chocolate and then also carve the pumpkin. Bling Bats, of course, make a little... their pumpkin is like a tribute with the skull inside. They make it specifically a tribute to Johnny Cash so that they can make like flames out of the chocolate to have the story. But it works really well. It's all like cohesive and it tells a story. And like those elements overshadow any like downsides to it. Team Boo, they make a pretty cool looking skull and they do some cool texture work on it, but the rest of it kind of lacking and it's kind of sad. It's like a skull on a stick, and at the bottom there's like a bunch of like powdered sugar, which I guess was supposed to be like snow maybe, or just like earth, and there's a bunch of like sugar shard like tombstones that just don't even look like anything. So, cool skull. Nothing else really well. Winners are the Bling Bats. But this time, instead of an extra assistant, they got first pick at the pumpkin patch for the spine chiller. This spine chiller, in reference to the title of the episode, is they have to create a scene that depicts a battle between zombies and vampires. The main tension in this one is one of the teams, Skulls of the Abyss, go like a little too creative in a way. They make like their idea at the end, which I guess maybe they came up with the rest of this halfway through because I missed this, or it was just not explained well, or they didn't have this idea when they started, was like, oh, why would zombies and vampires be fighting? They would be fighting over the same food source because zombies want human brains and like meat, and vampires want human blood. So that's why they're fighting. So they decided to make like a brawl scene between the zombies and vampires at like a 50s diner for some reason. I think they just kind of chose an aesthetic and was like, we can make that. The base of their creation was supposed to be like a giant pumpkin that was like the doors of the diner, and you would see like a vampire and a zombie fighting each other. The tension here was once Chris had carved that, like it was too big for the next level of the structure to be put on top of. So he had to like destroy what he had made and go for something new, which then looked worse because he wasn't able to like finish it properly. That was like the main tension here. Everything else kind of like worked out pretty well. There was like some brief, fighting between like, oh, I want this really, really nice pumpkin. Oh, the team that got to choose the pumpkin first took the pumpkin I wanted. Oh no. But then they deal with it. It ended up being fine. The edible element twist is again introduced halfway through this challenge. Justin comes in and tells them they all have to make some kind of edible ooze that needs to like drip out somewhere from the creation. Skulls of the Abyss, they end up with their 50s diner. They also made like a stack of pumpkins that were carved to make like a diner sign. And during judging, Shimon was like, that was unnecessary. Why did you do that? You could have spent more time on literally anything else. She's like, we did not need a diner. If you thought we needed a diner sign to indicate that this was a diner, then the theming for your rest of your creation is not good enough. Yikes. It also, it doesn't like it. There's pieces of it that look really good. There's like some small furniture they made for the diner piece, like made out of sugar, that looks really cool, but overall not great. Bling Bats made a like portrait, like a painting of a fight between a zombie and a vampire. And the vampire is like a Marie Antoinette noblewoman, because they're like timeless creatures. So like, let's show an old fight between these two creatures back like in a historical time period. It looks amazing. It again looks like something that from afar does not even look like it's made of food. Looks like I could go to the store and buy this as a Halloween decoration to put on my wall. And then the final one for Team Boo is a like zombie standing up over a vampire. The zombie is completely made of pumpkins, and like the pumpkin guts are used for like drippy zombie innards, which is like such a good idea. The zombie looks so cool, and it's like basically like won over the vampire woman, but Ray keeps saying like, oh, it's the vampire woman like sacrifice, like offering up her brains to the zombie. And this is when I got like weirdly critical, kind of in a funny way, just kind of joking around, but also like, it's like Ray keeps saying the vampire is offering her brains to the zombie, and it's like, that's not really a battle, is it? That's like the end of the battle, like the vampire is giving up. And I was like, and why does the immortal powerful woman have to submit and offer herself to the literally brain dead man? I was like, is Ray like subtly leaking some like weird fantastical misogyny that is also prevalent in all the stories what we've had about all these things? I was like, or is it a remark on the role of women in our society? I don't necessarily think it's either. I think it's just a cool creation, but I did think it was kind of weird, like, huh. Also, where are the women zombies? All the zombies are men, but we have like one male vampire and 2 female vampires. Where are the lady zombies? I want equality in my horror-themed food competition creations. Winner of this challenge was the Bling Bats. They are really like sweeping this whole competition, except for episode 1. Where they still won the like small scare. Skulls of the Abyss are the ones sent home. Final episode, episode 4, it's just called Underworld. This is the final battle. We get a recap of all the teams being eliminated, like a true recap of the other 3 episodes. It's only been 3 episodes, and they're like, let's recap it. Then again, I'm recapping 4 episodes for this, so who's really winning here? We get some words and interview from Karen and Ray. Karen recaps the highlights. Ray's is again intercut with Andrea's breakdown. Again, poor Andrea. She had this breakdown that was then recorded and used for footage and drama and tension in episode 2. And then it was brought back up in episode 3 when they explained why Becky was on their team and how Andrea left. And now it's brought back up in episode 4 when Ray is just sort of recapping his experience and his team's experience throughout the season. I do not blame Andrea for not enjoying her experience on this show. Or afterwards. Our guest judge for this episode is actress Scout Taylor Compton, star of the Halloween movies. She was just kind of there. She gave it her best. Small scare challenge was to create a ghost. This is where the Bling Bats are finally taken down a peg. Team Boo wins this challenge. They make a really cool ghost, like, face specter creature that is, like, pushing through some bars of a jail cell, and they, like, achieve this really cool effect by, like, drilling holes into the pumpkin flesh and sliding these, like, chocolate bar rods through it, so it looks like the pumpkin's going through the rods. Very, very cool. Bling Bats try to make this, like, spectral summoning moment. Like, the pumpkin has, like, ghost carved into it, and there's, like, buttercream fondant and pulled sugar specters flying out of it. It just doesn't look good, though. There's, like, movement, but, like, Miles is like, I have no idea what's going on without your explanation. And Shinman says, like, all the details are lost. Apparently, like, the airbrush jammed, Karen says in her interview, but she says she's not going to fight back. She's like, you gotta have good equipment. Ray, on the other team, is very happy that Bling Bats are finally, like, knocked down a little bit. He's trying to give his team a pep talk, like, listen, we beat them in the small scare, now they're off their game, let's beat them in the spine chiller. He's ready to go. So speaking of the spine chiller, the challenge is to create an interpretation of the underworld and incorporate a spicy treat. So the Bling Bats, Karen states they've always done, like, a balance between beauty and scary, but this time she thinks they should just go all scary. That's how they're going to sell the underworld, a depiction of hell. They choose to make a demon of gluttony riding on a large, one-eyed, monstrous steed, kind of like a behemoth from, or a beholder from, like, Doom, D&D, one of those two. I'm mixing them up. I can imagine what I'm talking about. Why can't you? And they choose to make a cayenne ganache with some jelly and a chocolate coating for their tasting element. Team Boo decides to make the gates of hell with a demon gatekeeper, some scorched earth, and, like, the river Styx flowing into it. And their tasting element is a spicy lemon cookie rock. Ray, for here, you know, because we're down to 2 teams and we have to fill the second half of the episode, we're actually getting more time, like, with each of the team and seeing more of the design process. I note that, like, Ray really seems to, like, have taken, like, a team, like, leader captain role here, you know, trying to, like, guide their two. He's like, I don't want anything cute. He says, he's like, I think if I leave the other two to, like, do their own thing, they're going to make something that's too cute. We want to be all scary. He's also taking a risk here at the final stage of the competition, and not just carving pumpkin, he decides to carve modeling chocolate as well. And I will say it really pays off. He makes this little, like, demonic goblin creature gatekeeper thing, and it looks really good. Karen at one point said she looked over to the other team and noticed Ray's chocolate carving figure that he was making, which is a very important thing to, like, pick up on and note, because so far the cast in the previous 3 episodes hadn't really mentioned looking at the other team's work to see what they were doing before the judging stage. You know, you can't really tell if maybe they were told not to do that. They're all in the same kind of, like, open concept competition kitchen, so it's easy to see what they're doing. But no one else has really mentioned, like, looking over and being like, oh, wow, their creation is really, really good. It's going to make me nervous, or, like, we need to step it up, you know? So halfway through, a twist is introduced where they have to incorporate a flying bat. Like an actual moving flying bat. It goes okay. The judges, you know, they came around, they gave their comments. It was very, very close, where one team excelled, the other team didn't do as well, but they, like, had a trade-off in that regard. But then ultimately, the winner was the Bling Bats, and they win $50,000. It's a very quick show. If you need something to watch and you want to get into the Halloween vibe, go watch Halloween Wars. Go watch every season in a row, because it goes fast. You know, and again, I think the show, you know, why do I want to talk about this show? Why did I make a whole podcast episode about this? 2 reasons. One, the stuff that I highlighted with Julie and Andrea, I think that's what surprised me. And it goes, like, this show is a really cool case study of, like, how people react to making and being on a reality TV show, and it maybe not being what they expected it to be. how involved it is. Andrea freaking out about the cameras, Julie, her conflict with her team, and then choosing to like leave the competition and just getting replaced. Like, they'll figure out what to do. That was such like a cool like surprise for me, analyzing the show. I often ask when I do these analyses, like, what does the show do for the people who make it, for the cast members? A show like this really has an opportunity for these specific cast members to demonstrate their skill, show off their creativity, and get like exposure in addition to, the financial gain at the end if they win. These are all artists. They're pumpkin carvers, they're cake makers, they're sugar artists. So having exposure and showing their skill on the show is like marketing for them. And same goes for like Shin Min. She runs like a bakery in San Francisco. So her being on the show, every time it's mentioned, she gets like free advertisement, essentially. And so, when these pumpkin carvers get to show off these really intricate designs and these masterpieces, when the sugar artists get to show that they have like a really high level of technique and skill, and then same for the cake artists, it makes people want to like reach out to them and, hire them for other things. So it's really good for exposure, really good for their own marketing and their own brands, as long as the show is nice to them. I'm sure Andrea was a great cake artist, but what is she going to be remembered for on the show? Having a breakdown. Like, not great. The show does have to be nice to you. You can't be portrayed into the villain or the weak one, I will say. And then also, what I was interested in when I like started watching the show is like, what does this show say about like commercial Halloween? We got to see classic spooky creatures and figures and tropes at the center of each challenge. A witch, haunted locations, cute things turned creepy is a fun subversion for Halloween. Dia de los Muertos Calavera skulls. We got to see zombies and vampires and ghosts. We got to see literal hell as the focus of a challenge. But also, the show is apparently rated TV PG. So no one can get like too crazy with their concepts, although it is all just food at the end of the day. And so I think it's interesting, like, what the teams, chose to do. I would be curious as if they had to, like, pass their ideas through someone on production to be like, yes, that's allowed, you can make that. So that way, like, none of the teams got, like, too far out there. Or if they were maybe just all instructed before they started, like, making the show. Like, hey, this is the kind of like level of scare that we're like, you can work up to here. You cannot go like past this level of gore or concept, Don't do any like on like there's a fight, right? The zombies versus vampires. But notice how both of those are like creatures. Like there's no humans being killed. The closest we got is like Hansel and Gretel in the stew. And it's just like little body parts. So it's just like the concepts that get chosen for the challenges, what the contestants choose to make in their creations, and what they think like make a scary counterpart to a stuffed bunny. And that team is like, oh, the killer bunny from Monty Python, like ubiquitous horror icon, the killer bunny. And then even the same for like the some of the spine chillers, like make a haunted location, and we got like 2 swamps. And like 2 variations of a haunted house, kind of like, you ask me, like, make a haunted location and I'm trying to be creative, I might go for like the haunted asylum. I know it's kind of like a tropey bit and it's a little, questionable, but it's like at least different. And I will say this is also the show in general, at least this first season, is a really good case study in like, how do you make these episodes interesting? If you just filmed teams making these really cool food creations for 5 or 6 hours, how do you make that into an interesting and engaging show? One, you add silly sound effects. I'm not putting them in the whole episode, but there were certainly like horror stings and like the tension sound, and at one point where they're like the beanstalk, where they were trying to put the pumpkin up really high onto the top of this pole and they weren't sure it was going to attach and stay there. All of the like background audio got cut out to like put that like tension of the like, is it gonna work? Is it gonna happen? And once they like succeeded, they played like a successful fanfare. But that's how you make this interesting. You have to look for tension, you have to look for conflict, and you have to look for surprises, and then you embellish this with editing. This is a classic trick, classic technique in not just reality TV, but like, storytelling, right? What makes a story engaging is actual like conflict and drama and intrigue. So if you already have this kind of events that have unfolded, to make it more engaging, you look for that, and then you find a way to focus it and make it more elevated. And I think the show does that really well. I think it's just a really good example of how to do so. What do you think? Have you watched Halloween Wars before? Have I convinced you to go check it out now? Especially since it's kind of a short show. You can just watch a season in an afternoon. This is the kind of show to like get kind of sucked into, again, because it's so quick, but also it's a really good show to just, not gonna lie, just kind of have on in the background and kind of look over every 10 minutes and be like, oh, what's happening? Oh, that's cool. They made a pumpkin wolf or whatever. But check it out. I encourage it. I don't think it's anything like critical to the entire genre. I don't think it's like holding up the world of reality TV on its shoulders and that it's like a must watch. But it certainly definitely has its like fans, including me, that will talk about it and recommend it. That was this episode of the recap episode. You can follow the podcast on Instagram for updates and announcements about the show, to see what I'm watching next and to see what I'm working on Instagram at the recap episode. All the episodes are also available on YouTube at the recap episode pod, in addition to wherever else you like to get podcasts. I upload directly to Spotify, so you can definitely find it there. Until next time, stay spooky.